Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Ha ha ha, you dingus. You dingus. You dingus. You dingus. Hello. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual, as it'll be centered around the most overused symbol in prehistoric media, which, of course, is Tyrannosaurus Rex. Always shown and known to live up to the name given to it, the Tyrant Lizard King, granting it a spot in the hearts and minds of anybody who grew up watching any sort of prehistoric media, from cartoons to movies to documentaries and even memes. But I want to know, how strong can you make T-Rex in Path of Titans? Because in this game we do actually have a cool little grouping system, allowing different playables to work off of each other with their different mechanics and buffs in order to unlock each other's untapped potential, over what you usually see, which is, ooh, we like Rex, let's stack, I don't know, 7 of them. So let's get this started, and with all that out of the way, I hope you all enjoy. So in the game right now, we have no in-game systems to actually limit what players can do in terms of what they want to use. But in the future, eventually, we're going to get those matchmaking changes, and it's going to push people towards, hey, if you want to all play together, you're going to have to make your group fit around 12 slots. And we all know that there's going to be people who, in that group of 12 slots, are going to want to be the big guy on Rex. And when those times do come around, I'm sure we're probably going to hear off of somebody saying that, hey, Rex is too weak, I can't do this or that. So let's go over a couple of different tools at our disposal to buff up Rex. First up is Terrible Roar, a call that boosts the damage by 25% and reduces cooldowns by 25% for all Tyrannosaurs in the group, and does not stack. And for the most common scenario is just 2 people standing in front of each other going om-nom, so the person with Terrible Roar is usually just going to win that engagement more often than not, as it's not only just 25% extra damage, but then 25% faster attack speed, so essentially a 50% DPS increase. And next up we have Killing Blows. Deal 20% increased damage, while a creature not in your group has a fracture or bone break status within 50 meters. In other words, you bone break something or fracture something, you get 20% extra damage. So that's brought that 50% DPS increase up to a 70% DPS increase. And let me just remind you, this is just what Rex can do alone. This is solo, this is just what it does. And damage is good and all, but how is this going to help you in surviving? Well, it has other tools then for surviving, like, say, Thick Boned. Become immune to bone break and fracture except from falling. Pretty much does what it says on the tin. You can't be slowed down, basically. Except for something like a Serato using Taunt, or maybe getting paralysis stacked up on you, from biting a Merigaya, in which you're doing that to yourself anyway. Next up we have Power Couple. While grouped up with another Tyrannosaur within 200 meters, gain 25% increased status effect recovery rate, and, you drain food and water 25% slower. Does what it says on the tin. Another tool to actually help with, survivability. You are stronger against bleeders, which I know a lot of people complained about for Rex being weak against anything that deals bleed or any sort of status effects. Problem solved right there. And here you might be thinking, but Hanya, I actually have to team up with another Tyrannosaur, and there's not enough space in the group. This is a problem. Well, guess what? You can hatch in a baby, and then that baby also contributes and activates your power couple for that survivability boost. And guess what? It also gives you damage. And after your mindless slaughter of standing in front of someone and going om-nom until they're dead after all those damage buffs, you can then have a little nibble of their body and start healing up all your health really damn fast, thanks to this little ability called Ravenous, in which whenever you eat another player's corpse, it grants you a health recovery boost for 60 seconds. But you can only activate it once every 5 minutes, which that seems fine to me. It's a very strong health recovery boost, or it's practically like a lamb healing call. And the strongest part about it, it works even if you are bleeding. So let's go over some of the boons that it pretty much just has in its own kit. So Terrible Roar, 50% DPS increase, 25 from the damage, 25 from the reduced cooldowns. You can use those cooldowns for other things like Crushing Bite, which, hey, more fracture. As long as you don't pop the full bone break too early, you're pretty much killing anything. And so next up, killing blows, we get another 20% extra damage, which under the condition of fracturing something or something being fractured within range, that brings our DPS increase up from 50% up to 70%. But if you don't want to have to keep thinking about killing blows and keeping the fracture at a certain amount, then you can forgo it and take power couple instead, just giving you a little extra survivability against anything that deals any sort of status effect, which includes, stuff that does fracture just like you. Then next up we have a kind of a situational choice of depending on what you want or what you're up against. If you're up against something killing blows, something like thick bone will be a lot more useful since, hey, killing blows is now useless against you because you cannot be fractured. And then on the other hand of the situation, we have Ravenous, which is useful if there's any player corpses in the area. Even if you did not kill it, you can have a quick nibble and increase your healing. Sure, if you are bleeding, you'll, heal at a slower rate, but if you pair this with power couple, and you have another Rex in your group, then you're going to heal off that bleed a lot faster and get to your really good healing a lot quicker. And lastly, to get use out of power couple and also get a nice little 25% damage bonus, hatch in a baby Rex. It's pretty much a free killing blows 24/7. I literally keep my Rex at juvie for anybody who wants to actually use power couple on their Rex. Then they'll just invite me into their group, and boom, they can activate that very useful passive. And if they want a little extra damage, well, they can just decide to hatch me in as their own baby. But there does exist more things to buff up the power of Rex, and I feel that the best things that I've seen so far are dasp and Deinonychus. Deinonychus being able to provide an unparalleled amount of defensive support capability, and then Dasplito being able to actually boost up armor, boost up damage, and actually provide said damage itself in whatever situation it seems to come into. So let's get into it. And we'll start off with Deinonychus using Distracting Chatter, a call that increases all group members' armor by 25% within 50 meters and lasts until the Deinonychus ends up getting hit. Does what it says on the tin. You can run around like a headless chicken while using this ability and just dodging whatever kind of attack and providing great value to your group. Or you could try using Meat Shield. When pounced on a group member, redirect most damage that they would receive to yourself. You are now immune to knockback when using pounce while latched. Now, think of this almost like you are an additional health bar to whatever you pounce onto. Now, for a Rex to have a Meat Shield Deinon pounced onto them, pretty much think of it as granting the Rex an extra 2/3 health, temporarily. Just because it's just the nature of the ability. Any damage that the Rex takes, well, the Deinon pretty much takes most of that damage, so the Rex is pretty much just not taking anything and is still fine until the Deinon ends up jumping off. And it's about 2/3 of the Rex's health. It's very strong. And once the Deinon has decided to jump off because it doesn't feel safe in continuing meat shielding this Rex, it can just hop off and then continue to use Distracting Chatter, granting more armor to the group. And so next up, let's move on to Dasplito, which also has two tools to actually help out Rex in a group. First up being Tyrant's Ally. While in a group with other Tyrannosaurs, gain 15% increased armor. Also applies to each Tyrannosaur in your group, within 50 meters of you, and stacks up to 2 times. So you could get 2 Dasplitos in a group and give a Rex an extra 30% armor. But along with that, you could also use Tyrant's Roar. Increases the damage of all Tyrannosaurs in your group by 15% within 30 meters for 80 seconds, able to stack up to 2 times. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. For 80 seconds, if you have 2 Dasplitos in a group, you can gift all of you 30% extra damage. So by having 2 Dasps in a group with Tyrant's Roar and Tyrant's Ally, you were giving everybody in the group an extra 30% armor and damage. And also, it's Dasp. It's also able to just punch really hard against pretty much the entire roster. Whether it's using Fracture, whether it's using piercing damage, or whether it's up against a bunch of smalls, because, hey, everybody knows how hard it is to actually try and get a good jump on a Dasp. I would call it a jack of all trades, but I feel it's just a master of all trades. And so now it's actually time to form a group, and thankfully we've got 12 slots to work with right here. Though 5 of those slots are going to be taken up by a Rex because, well, that's what the video's all about. The Rex will be able to bring in at least a 50% DPS increase for any Tyrannosaurs in this group using Terrible Roar, so the Dasps will be able to actually take advantage of using that. Then it can also choose to use Killing Blows for an extra 20% damage increase. But that ends up leaving us with 7 slots left, and the easy route you could all go for this is you could use 2 dasps and the deinon. The dasps end up providing 30% armor and damage from Tyrant's Ally and Tyrant Roar, and then the deinon is providing meat shield and distracting chatter for more armor. Meaning that with this setup, the Rex is now dealing double the amount of DPS, or 100% extra DPS, along with then having 55% extra armor, and then at those times where the deinon is using meat shield, also granting an extra 2/3 of its health. While the dasps also get an 80% DPS increase along with 55% extra armor. Needless to say, you are going to be able to actually shred everything you come across, though it does have one slight little weakness, which is to bleeders, but with 2 dasps that are this boosted up, I don't really see it being that much of a problem. But if you want to actually lead into actually doing everything, just dealing with everything, no problem whatsoever, let's get on to the next setup. Now, this next setup won't be quite as intense, but I think it gives you a decent amount of flexibility. Now, what I want you to do is take the Rex, take off Killing Blows, and replace it with Power Couple, which ends up giving you a nice amount of status healing. Next up is to replace one of the dasps with a baby Rex that the adult Rex has hatched in. This will end up actually lowering the amount of damage and armor provided by Tyrant's Roar and Tyrant's Ally down to 15%, but will actually end up granting the adult Rex an extra 25% extra damage, along with then getting use out of Power Couple to help that status healing, thanks to it actually hatching out the baby Rex. And so with this setup and having everything active at the same time, the Rex is getting 95% increased DPS, 35% increased armor, and then obviously, meat shield from the deinon, which is pretty much another 2/3 health for the Rex. But not only that, it's also getting 25% increased status healing from Power Couple since it has the baby Rex, meaning that it's able to shrug off bleed, venom, toxin, poison, paralysis, fracture, all that, nasty stuff that it doesn't want to deal with. Along with the damage that it would have gotten from Killing Blows being non-conditional anymore, since, hey, baby Rex, it just has to stay near, and it's a permanent 25% increased damage for the adult. Now, of course, this does mean that nothing else in the group really benefits from having the baby Rex there, but the adult Rex is able to deal with so many more things way more flexibly. In other words, it could deal with another Rex, or it could deal with a Titan, or it could deal with an Anno, or it could deal with any number of different status effect users. The only real worry is that now the dasp is going to struggle a little bit more, and possibly the deinon is going to struggle a little bit more, along with the case that, hey, maybe people will wise up and actually notice that,
oh god, I'm about to start taking war
this
damage.
baby Rex is actually the key to holding all this together right now.
No!
So it starts off with me, Caden, and Tanks running into Grand Plains because I am desperate for food. And my main concern was getting to the critter burrow that I could see, though it didn't go as I expected.
Ah! I'm gonna die. Sarko did. I don't think so.
Throughout this whole thing, Caden's main focus was to kind of just keep the attention of the Rexes and keep harassing. And in the spot where I got grabbed, Cherry had just killed an Achillo and started trying to harass the Aloe and the Sarko. The main focus here seemed to be to kind of just keep them still and whittle down this Sarko, make it use up a bunch of stamina. Thankfully, there wasn't just an Achillo and a deinon. There was also a Conch, a Meg, and some other things kind of just nipping at the Sarko to keep it still. Just to buy time for Chromie and Gusa to actually make it over and finish off the Sarko. And while all that was going on, I was pretty desperate.
Oh my god. Food. I'm no longer starving, at least.
And with my hunger issue sorted out, I regrouped back up with Gusa, as the death of the Sarko ended up summoning over pretty much all of the Rexes from the center of Grand Plains. And it makes sense, there is a lot of bellies to fill, and there is a lot of engines that need fuel. Though that did not stop the conks from what they do best, being very, very annoying. Which I must say, works perfectly for us. And so the Rexes ended up actually hoovering up all of that food, before then heading back out into the middle of Grand Plains, where Toxic was trying to go after an aloe. I'm guessing he probably killed it, but I couldn't really capture it on replay, since, yeah, they went out of replay distance. Something else had died out in Grand Plains, which brought all of the Rexes to get their pound of flesh. We do need to actually find a way to separate them, since 7 Rexes all biting one target, there's not much you could really do about that, even with all the buffs that we have. If we can separate just a few of them, we can end up actually just overpowering them with just 2 Rexes that are super buffed. So with Caden attacking them on the west side and giving them a lot of harassment, it ended up lining up pretty well with Toxic attacking the Straggler in the back, and this ended up actually separating them. 3 Rexes going after Caden, and then 4 of them coming back for Toxic. And so Toxic continued to harass and annoy and damage, and pretty much just push them to burn a bunch of cooldowns and burn some stamina. And we did get a little bit fortunate in that one of these Rexes were very, very aggressive, a little too aggressive I should say, and ended up following Toxic over to Gusa and Chromie, who have been waiting for the right moment to do anything. And with one Bone Break bite actually landed, it was easy enough to know that this Rex right here was using Thick Boned.
Nanotyrannus.
And so the Rex made it back to the pack. All while Caden and Cherry are still doing their thing in the backline, keeping their attention. But now these Rexes know that they've also got another 2 Rexes that they're gonna have to deal with. They do attempt to recuperate a little bit and maybe get some stamina, but thankfully, Toxic has been very proactive in trying to limit that as much as he could. Even just being present is enough to make these Rexes be a bit more careful, so long as they don't actually end up regrouping with the other Rexes that Cherry and Caden are dealing with alongside another Conk and a Megalania. I think we should be okay. And shortly after Toxic doing his harassment and keeping them on their toes, it was fine to actually get the show started. With everyone popping their buffs, it is now time to rumble. Right now, Gusa has popped Terrifying Roar, which is 50% DPS increase. He has me standing behind him for another 25% damage, and also a deinon on his side to face tank anything. Meanwhile, Chromie had Toxic in her group, granting Tyrant's Ally and Tyrant's Roar. And now we did get a little bit lucky that 2 of these Rexes, instead of focusing on Chromie, they actually ended up going for Gusa, which was actually able to face tank it, allowing Chromie to just 1v1 and face tank the other Rex, while accidentally also killing Toxic at the same time. But this did leave an opening for Chromie and Gusa to burn down this Granite Rex really, really quickly. And with the random hats also attacking them, it was a good distraction for Chromie to then finish off a 3rd Rex, leaving one last Rex out of this little
and that
skirmish.
one's dead as well. Jesus Christ. Oh, sorry, Caden. I'm so sorry, Caden. Alright. Nice. Okay, that's just funny.
And so now there are only 3 Rexes left, in which Caden and Cherry have been keeping very well distracted and separated from the ones that just died. And Gusa is slowly closing in. But yet again they seem to have separated themselves, and they seem a little too concentrated on Cherry at the moment, giving Gusa an ample opportunity to get a bunch of free damage. Bringing in yet another Rex to save their friend, but Gusa has gotten a good amount of damage and decides to walk out. And the most important thing for me to really do is kind of just to stay next to Gusa in order for him to get a nice little damage buff.
You do so much damage, mate.
And so Chromie and Gusa both focus on 1 Rex at a time, taking out a 5th Rex. leaving one last Rex, which decides to end up popping Rampage, and then just walking away without even dealing any damage. And while Gooser and Chromie were dealing with those two Rexes, the last Rex was kind of distracted by a Conk, a Meg, and then also Cherry and Caden. Had they all stayed together, they may have had a better chance. As because right now, it seems that there was more than just us attacking them. There was also some random people who didn't really appreciate seeing a giant mob of Rexes. And obviously, they just got finished off by Gooser and Chromie, who eventually ended up catching up. And like that, all the Rexes were finished. Taken out by the power of a little bit of communication, and a bunch of actual group buffs.
Nice. Jesus, all of them. The power of buffs. Honestly, no one could have said that any better than what just Caden just said. These are the players that say Rex is bad.
And from this, I should say that Rex, sure, it may not be able to take on a horde of Concavenators and Megalanias. Obviously, nothing can just fight the entire planet. But has one of the highest potentials for pretty much killing anything in the game. On the low end, with pretty much no group support, Rex is decent, or pretty damn good. On the high end, Rex is one of the strongest and one of the most high potential playables in the game, mainly just due to its base level.
I do like that all I'm here for is just to give you damage.
And shortly after, we ended up killing the EO, and it seemed that pretty much all of the small randoms who ended up helping us with those Rexes, they kept trying to give me trophies of everything that died. It was funny, but I don't need to grow. I don't want to grow. If anything, I'll just use this horn to stab Gooser in the leg. But if you want to know what the true highlight of the night was, it is what I would call the greatest battle in Path history, which was two Rexes sword fighting with a clamped baby Rex and a deinon. But here now I want to take a moment to actually say that the unsung hero here was actually the deinon, making sure that Gooser and pretty much anybody in the group was able to just tank everything. Even without using Meat Shield, the value from distracting chatter was so damn high.
I know, Caden, I know what you're gonna say. Just one button or something like that. Ren sounds pretty cool right now, yeah. I bet it does, doesn't it?
And so here we are at the end. So, tell me, what do you think could actually improve this setup? Now, as much of a pain as this was to make, it was also a little bit fun, but the reason why I made it in the first place is because I keep hearing people say, oh please buff Rex, it needs to be stronger, and well, no. What you really need to do is just get the most out of, you know, the actual mechanics of the game instead of, well, what you saw in the video of people just stacking 7 of them and then getting killed by a bunch of people who are actually using those mechanics of the game. Along with a bit of communication, of course, but, you know, that's just part of the parcel whenever you play as a group. And let's be honest, once those matchmaking changes come around in the first place, you won't be able to even attempt to try and run like 7 Rexes in the first place, so you may as well adjust to it now, and then when those changes come around, you'll be, you know, you'll be ready for it, you'll be used to it. You won't have as much of a struggle when those changes come around and you ain't able to just run 7 Rexes or 7 Titans and, well, you get where I'm coming from. It's pretty much adjusting to the change before it happens, and guess what? It works very well already. I know solo players struggle already, so this could be kind of a pain for them. But I think it's more interesting than what we usually see in official servers anyway. Either way, as usual, I'm kind of just waiting for the next update. As I said in my last video, it's been over 4 weeks now since the Sarko TLC. And I have a feeling that something is just right around the corner. And with Switch just having pretty much caught up to the live branch for updates, they're probably gonna be back in Switch jail right yet again, which is a shame. Well, you can't blame Aldron for that. You can blame Nintendo. But anyway, my head hurts from all the maths. My throat is a little bit sore from doing all this talking. And yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye.